Hello my fellow bassists. So have you ever been jamming with a band or playing live and after an hour of just playing bass lines, suddenly the singer asks you to play a bass solo? This isn't something you do very often, so you quickly try and remember some tasty pentatonic licks, but you're a little bit nervous so your playing isn't very in time. The crowd looks a bit bored, so for the last few bars of your solo you decide to just slap as fast as possible because sometimes that impresses them. And before you know it, your solo's over. If any of you can relate to this, don't worry, I've played many solos like this at live performances, and it took me a while to learn how to play a musical sounding bass solo, but it's definitely something that you can learn. In fact, usually the problem is that you're overcomplicating things. So in today's lesson, I'm going to teach you the basics of soloing over chord changes, including why you should know the chord changes of a song, how to find the chord tones, and how to create musical phrases using those chord tones and other notes. So the vast majority of songs, especially in genres like rock, pop, metal, and jazz, use chord progressions, which are also sometimes called chord changes. The chord progression of a song is really important because it kind of dictates what each band member should be playing at any given moment, except the drummer, who can kind of just do whatever they want. Okay, so I'm kidding mostly, but for example, as a bassist, if we see an E7 chord, that means that we should probably play mostly notes from that chord, like this. And then if we see an A7 chord, here are the notes that we should probably focus on. There's a huge range of how complicated a chord progression can be, including stuff like Born in the USA, which is just 2 chords, ranging all the way up to jazz standards like giant steps, which basically changes key every 2 bars. When it comes to improvising solos, if the chord changes are really simple, you can kind of get away with just using 1 or 2 scales you know that fit the song. For example, here's me playing a solo over the chord changes for Isn't She Lovely, but I'm going to make absolutely no attempt to follow the chords. And now I'm going to play another solo over that same progression, but this time I'm going to make sure I hit notes from each chord as they come up. So as you can hear, knowing the chord progression and which notes fit each chord can make a solo sound much more musical and connected to the song. But of course, the big question is, how do I improvise a solo that follows the chords? Step 1, identify the chords in the progression. For this lesson, I'm just going to give you the chords, but let me know if you want a video on how to identify chords by ear. I'm going to give you a nice simple chord progression today that just consists of E7 and A7. This is a pretty common progression that you find in a lot of styles, including rock and funk. Let's have a quick listen to how that progression sounds. Alright, so now that you know the chord progression, step 2 is to identify the notes that you can use on the fretboard. For now, I just want you to identify the chord tones. Chord tones are literally just notes within the current chord. So like I showed you earlier, if the band is playing the E7 chord, here are your chord tones. And if the band is currently playing an A7 chord, you've got these notes. But you don't want to only be playing these notes down in the low register, so step 3 is to be able to play these notes in at least 2 places on the fretboard. So for E7, you also have your chord tones here. And for A7, it's the exact same thing, but starting on the A string. And if you want to go the extra mile and you have 21 frets or more, you can also identify the chord tones up here. So you've got E7 here, and A7. So now that you've identified the chord tones on your fretboard, step 4 is to play all of the chord tones as arpeggios over each chord. Try doing that with me now. Okay, so obviously it doesn't sound very exciting or musical yet, but running through those chord tones will really help you know where they are. Step 5 is to just practice very simple phrases using these chord tones. It's really important to keep things simple at this stage, especially if you're new to this, so just stick to improvising in one area of the fretboard for now. Trying to get fancy too quickly will actually make things sound worse. Try to focus on playing in time, don't worry about whether it sounds impressive, and just have fun and play some simple stuff like this. It might take half an hour or more of practicing like that before it starts feeling really comfortable and natural, and that's completely fine. Once you're really comfortable in one area of the fretboard, step 6 is to start practicing improvising in another area of the fretboard. Here's some improvisation using chord tones in that higher register that we identified earlier. After doing that for a while, if you're comfortable with improvising with chord tones in 2 or more areas of the fretboard, step 7 is to start experimenting with adding more notes. At this stage, I don't even want you to worry about whether the notes that you add are in the scale or not. Just keep your solo as mostly chord tones, try adding other notes here and there, and really pay attention to how each note sounds. Here's the kind of thing that you might play at this stage. Try to make your phrases musical by adding rests and using a little bit of repetition, but above all at this stage, just try and make sure that you're having fun and experimenting while using the chord tones as your safe notes. 2 of the main reasons why people find soloing so difficult is because we try too hard to be impressive and we worry too much about making mistakes. Playing simple stuff in time and with feeling sounds a lot better than trying to play really complicated stuff, but it's out of time and doesn't follow the chords at all. So now you've learned all the basics of soloing over chord progressions, but learning and knowing isn't enough. You've got to practice this stuff for yourself. So you can download the exact backing track that I used today for my solos if you just tap the link in the description, and try and practice that for about 20 minutes per day, just improvising using the steps that I laid out in this lesson. And if you really want to become a master of soloing over chords, you can download the backing tracks for 3 different chord progressions, and also a worksheet that guides you through this whole process I've outlined today if you go to the Basecamp Patreon, which you can also find in the description. That'll also give you instant access to the entire Playing with Music theory course, as well as a huge library of exclusive bass lessons. Today's lesson was just the basics of soloing over chords. I'll go over the more advanced concepts in other videos in the future. But for now, thanks so much for coming here and learning with me. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next lesson.